Hi, everyone. So, first principles is the default, but it is also just a starting point. What do I mean by that? Let's get into it. So the problem we have, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the problem we have is that we have many people who are ill, who are not well, right? And they are not well at bottom because there's a mismatch. Again, using a first principles approach here, but I think this is in the case of chronic illness, I would go so far as to say this is 99.99% true. The other 0.01% are sort of rare genetic disorders. So, take this with a slight grain of salt, but still, it's the case that almost all of our illnesses, something as little as something as serious or as not serious as putting on a bit of weight as we get older, or chronic knee pain as we get older, or slowly losing night vision, which was happening to me some time ago as we get older. Everything from that to like diabetes and Alzheimer's and cancer and what we consider the plagues of prosperity. These are all a mismatch between our genetics, what we evolved to be, and our environments, the environments in which we're living, which are toxic environments in all kinds of ways, right? So once you understand that as a first principles as a first principle, then what are you meant to do after that? What's the next step? The next step is to say, look, if I'm not thriving, I need to try and go to some kind of a default, some kind of an ancestral lifestyle to the extent that I can. Obviously, everyone has limitations. It can't be done 100% of the time in 100% of the cases. But I'm going to, for example, eat the kind of foods that my ancestors would have eaten, focusing on fatty meat as a starting point, right? Now, if you do that, if you've done that for some time, so that's sort of this is sort of the basics here. But if you've done that for some time and you don't see improvements or you don't see all the improvements that you would like, then and only then do we troubleshoot. So what do I mean by that? Most people, if I have a disease, if I get diagnosed with arthritis, or even if I get diagnosed with something more serious, right, cancer and so on, most people will take a drug. Most people will take an intervention. Even if you don't take a drug, you're going to take, I don't know, some kind of green smoothie or some kind of antioxidants and so on. Like you're going to pop pills, right? But that's not an ancestral approach, right? So we start with the diet and the lifestyle and all that stuff. But if we've done the diet and the lifestyle and it's still not 100% there, that's when we might have to use modern medicine. Now, someone will come to me and say, "Well, no, that's not the right approach. How do we know modern medicine is going to work and so on?" I said, "Look, any given situation is a cost benefit analysis. What is the risk of taking this drug versus what is the benefit?" So it's hard to know the risk and benefits unless one starts from a default starting point. What do I mean by the default starting point? I mean, what is the default diet, the default lifestyle for humans? And in order to understand it, you have to understand the evolutionary conditions under which humans evolved. And especially the diet. Diet is like 60, 70, 80% of it, right? Once you've got the diet right, and let's say that you're trying to do other things, right? You've got your diet right, you're increasing sun exposure, you're trying to do a bit of sprinting or whatever it is that you think our ancestors may have done in the right way, and also some just walking, some light exercise as well, right? So you've got sort of the exercise package done, you've definitely got the diet package done, you're trying to get the sunlight package done, et cetera, and you still don't see the kind of improvements that you want. Well, then, depending on the circumstance, that's when we might want to experiment um, with different kinds of nutrients, with different kinds of supplements, with different kinds of drugs, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, my position is it's not that those things are bad. It's not that they're bad or good. I think that over reliance on them is bad. So the first time my blood sugar goes up above 6 or whatever it is, and I get diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes or whatever they're calling it these days, do I reach straight for the metformin? Or do I say, wait a second, I think I can make improvements on this if I just change my lifestyle, if I change my diet, et cetera, et cetera. And only then, now let's say I do that and still the blood sugar is not coming down. Well, in that particular case, maybe you come and talk to me and we'll find maybe there's something you haven't optimized, because with blood sugar, we can pretty much always get it, in the non-diabetic range pretty easily. It's not too tricky. But if it is something that's more tricky, if it's a rare autoimmune disease, if it's cancer, if it's whatever you're struggling with, I think one needs to have a big toolkit. One needs to have a lot of things that you can reach in and experiment with to try and find what's going to work for you at a specific time and a specific circumstance, right? But that is only you can only do those interventions if you've tried the default human lifestyle as a starting point, right? Which includes diet, but not exclusively diet, right? So once we said, look, I've been doing this default human lifestyle for a while, I'm eating the proper foods, et cetera, et cetera. And I've seen a lot of improvements. Everyone who's done this will see significant improvements just because, I mean, we see it in 100% of cases, right? So you're going to see improvements, but if you don't see all the improvements you want, that's when you can look at other tools, right? What would be an example of a tool that I think is useful but is not really ancestral or doesn't seem to be ancestral? Well, sauna seems to be a really powerful tool. Heat exposure seems to be a really powerful tool for a lot of people. But of course, our ancestors weren't going around in saunas, right? But our ancestors did, evolve here in southern Africa, fairly close to the equator. So, the conditions were different. So we have to find ways to mimic some of those conditions. So these are just some thoughts. The point is, the ancestral stuff is a starting point. Asking the question of what is the lifestyle that humans evolved to live, that is a starting point. But that is not an end point. Once you start there, you will see significant progress. You will meet a lot of your health goals. But if some remain unmet, that's when we can experiment with different protocols. That's when we can experiment with different supplements. Yeah. So as always, if you're interested in giving the sort of default human diet a go, or even not, even if you just want to hit your health goals and make some improvements based on where you are right now, give me a call. I got a couple of open slots for this month in the Healthy Heart Blueprint, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.